There it is. All right.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to season 6, episode 42 of the Dualistic Unity podcast. I just had a great moment where I pointed at the screen for a little eye that appears when you're recording on Restream, and it happened at the same time, so it felt pretty cool. And I was just sharing before this a moment of appreciation for a creative idea. And I shared it with Andrew, and he hadn't heard it before. And he was like, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could take full credit. He's like, oh, you didn't make that? I was like, no, I didn't make that. But it was so awesome that I just loved that it existed. And I appreciated it's existed so much that I didn't want to attach anything to it. I didn't want to, there was like no desire to take credit. I was like, no, it's really good. I wish I could, but it's just so good that I'm so glad somebody thought of it. And it's the Raw Authentic marketing campaign for the Raw rolling papers. And someone heard the raw and authentic and how the awe of raw and the awe of authentic are the same. And I'm just like, kudos to their marketing department and whoever created that. Thank you, because it's just it's really cool to see different ideas come to life and to see the connections that are between two things that seem unrelated or untied, and it's just really cool to see that there are many more connections than first appear to be the case.
For sure.
And so that's where I'd like to start this episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, those hidden connections in a sense. But yeah, I think that it's like that balance between taking credit and taking responsibility for things. I don't know, as you were talking through taking credit for something, I was like, yeah, it's seems like something that seems so important, like taking credit for something you accomplish or achieve and like getting a medal for it and like putting that up on your wall, you feel really good about yourself. But then it's like when you stop taking as much credit, it doesn't mean that you're not still, responsible for everything that you do in your life and everything, everything about your life that it's not really on anyone else ever. And so the less credit you have to take, it's like there's a weight that comes with wanting to take credit for, everything, all the thoughts that you have, any insights, anything you share, you're interacting with someone and said, oh, you helped me a lot with that, and like kind of pushing back against that, not like forcefully necessarily, but just understanding that, to help someone, it's not really you doing it, or at least you don't have to feel any way about that. It's like you can just do it and have that interaction and, move on and not think about yourself so much as you're doing it, which creates a lot more space to, see everyone else, see other people and, what they're going through when you're not, solely focused on yourself all the time.
Yeah, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. And I mean this honestly, like, the beautiful part about what you just said is that there is a lightness to it, but and at the same time you do see people. But that means you see what they've been doing the whole time without you being something that they come into conflict with, right? Like a lot of our interactions with people, we stop them in their tracks from frankly running amok with selfishness. And the less that you make it about you, the more you start to realize that people just don't notice. Like they will happily just make it about them over and over and over again. And you see it more and more because you're not making it about you. And so there still comes this need to go, hey, I'm not taking it personally, but that's some bullshit right there. I'm not taking it personally, but I'm certainly not going to condone that as an action that I wouldn't do because of this and this and this and this and this. There's a consequence. There's a ripple to what we do. And that I think is the important part about letting go is recognizing that doesn't negate your responsibility. Like that doesn't negate the fact that you're still a piece in the puzzle. You're still a player on the board. You're still interacting with everyone. And if you just completely be selfless, and by that I mean just give everybody what they want, which is not the same as selflessness. I want to make that very clear, but often we make the assumption that it is. People will just run roughshod over you. They won't give a shit. They won't even stop to hesitate. And would you? When you're really caught up in your stuff, if somebody's not actively saying, no, man, I'm not going to put up with that, fuck you, wouldn't you just continue on with what you're doing? And that's why consequence can be so useful, but that means you have to continue being a consequence. You just don't have to take it personally. It is still important that you set boundaries. It is still important that you have your space, that there are things that you just will not condone, will not perpetuate. That doesn't mean that you're not going to adjust, you're not going to have softer edges or anything like that, but it does mean that you're going to be another point of reference. You're going to be another part of that environment. Being selfless doesn't mean just laying down. It means thinking about the consequence for everybody involved, you included. Because if you're not taking care of yourself to some degree, we all suffer. You can't maintain that clarity. And so I just wanted to say that, it's funny because we watched that video with the priest where he's like, you have to die. You have to sacrifice. And he's like crying about it. And it's like, you don't need to cry about it. Just set a certain degree of boundary. Understand that you are still a part of that. Like, it's not all sacrifice for the greater good by any means. It's not even sacrifice for the greater good. It's sacrificing the petty shit that's hurting you. You're not sacrificing for other people. You're sacrificing because you're hurting yourself. That's all you're doing. Right? And it can help to recognize that it's not for some like large worldly impact. It really is for the impact it has on each and every moment that you're living. And that changes each and every other moment that everybody else is living accordingly, because we're all connected. So selflessness doesn't mean being a doormat, I guess is what I'm saying. It means just not having as much of yourself as the focus, so that way other people can take up an equal amount of space. We are all in this together, and we should all be considerate of everything and everyone, ourselves included, equally.
And yeah, and I think that's a process of growing up, in a massive way, is just how many considerations you're taking in, because that sense of, not doing what you want, doing something for someone else as you grow up, that net widens, that bubble widens, the considerations widen. And, as much as it's like life's simple, not easy, it's like when you're being honest with yourself, there's a simplicity to it because answers aren't as complex despite all of the considerations that you're taking in. It's still the choices that you make moment to moment. And how many considerations you're taking in as those expand. Sometimes there's conflicting considerations, and you can't just do what everyone wants, because that splits you into a bunch of different pieces. And it's like in certain experiences, there's priorities over one thing or another, things you're used to, kind of being a doormat for, throughout your life without realizing it so much. And then you start to notice that, and what's left when you're not doing that as much, as you're taking in more considerations. There can be more of a balance found, but it's got to come from you. It's still got to be, your choice. And I think that's the difference. Is it almost like can feel selfless when you're doing what other people want you to do, and not really noticing that, like not really realizing it. Because I think that being nice, being selfless, you start taking in more considerations, and it comes into conflict with a lot of different things. And you try to do everything for a bit. You try and like hold all those, like the example of the spinning plates, the guys who hold all the spinning plates, and it can start to feel like that, trying to stay in control as you expand your considerations. It's like there's more plates, and trying to balance all of that, and they start falling off because you understand that there's more to consider. There's a lot in the world, there's a lot of things going on, but it still stems from you. And so there is that sense of like looking at what, how certain actions make you feel personally. And you start to be more sensitive. You start to take in more considerations. And it's not like that's not that complex. It's certain things, tie you up in knots, and certain things you're more relaxed because you're living your life and doing your best and being yourself and expressing yourself as best you can. And I think that's just the process of growing up, is taking in more considerations and understanding that like sometimes choices and decisions, they're not going to be easy. They're not going to be this simple sort of basic thing. There's a lot of considerations out there, and you do your best, but you're willing to understand that there's a lot. There's a lot there, and not every decision is going to be simple or easy. But when it's coming from you, then there is almost a simplicity to it. Although it doesn't always. I don't know. Sometimes it can contradict previous experiences.
There was a quote by Da Vinci that the ultimate sophistication is simplicity. And it's because often we're taking in all these considerations about what people want from us, what people might perceive us to be, what we want, what the world wants, what's logical and where we want to go in our lives. And we're looking at all this stuff, and we come up with dozens of things that we need to do to compensate for all of them instead of just one, from moment to moment to moment. Instead of looking at, right, but what is the one thing I can do right now that addresses all of that in a foundational way, that addresses all of that even in a subtle or nuanced way. Like, I can relax. Oh shit, that's going to make everything a lot easier, because now I'm not so tense, I'm more aware. Every problem from here on in, gets a little bit more simple, right? Or at least I'm a little bit more clear and able to deal with it. And so it really helps to remember that the ultimate sophistication is simplicity. To like, what is the one thing that you can do? It's kind of like so the archways in architecture. Archways were one of the like biggest discoveries of the early ancient world, like being able to make an archway that didn't just collapse. And from that technology, they were able to make aqueducts and bridges using archways to support that weight. And it was all because they figured out how to make an archway that didn't collapse. And it was all dependent on one thing: the keystone. The keystone in the middle of the archway had to be the perfect shape and the perfect weight to support the rest of the stones that were leaning against it. And so despite all the stones being important, it was the simplicity of that one keystone that actually made the whole thing work. And that's what we have to find in our day-to-day lives, in our moment-to-moment lives. What's the keystone that keeps this, going? What's the keystone that I can apply in this situation that's going to support everything I'm doing in the most simplistic way possible? Just not by adding any weight to it, right? But actually adding not structure so much as a degree of stability. Because your life is stable. Like, you'll notice that as you go through your life, you're going to make giant fuck-ups. You're going to hurt people's feelings. You're going to get fired from a job. You're going to get a divorce. You're going to go through all of this stuff. And while you're going through all that, there's just so many things that you can start thinking about. So many things that you can start trying to take in, and you start running around like a chicken with your head cut off. But ultimately, what you realize is at the end of the day, you're going to pick up, you're going to look at the next piece, and you're going to keep going. And it's because your life, regardless of what you might think, is fairly stable. You can fuck up real bad. You can burn your whole life to the ground, and you'll still be here the next day. We forget that when we're looking at the future. We forget that when we're invested in a job or a relationship or a new place to live or a new career in school or whatever it might be. Like, we forget that as we're so afraid of that not succeeding, as we're so afraid of that falling apart, we forget it's okay. You know, it might suck, but life is going to continue on. There is a stability to life if you stop making yourself so fragile. And the fragility just comes from the panic. It comes from the panic. Like, oh God, if this doesn't work out, my life is over. It's like, it's not though. It's not. And I know that sucks to hear because it is the motivator behind so much of what we do. But the fact is that everything you're trying to do right now could fail. And you would still be okay to start something again. You know, because as long as you're here, you have potential. So just try not to take things quite so seriously, I think is the lesson here. I like that aspect of this as we go into season 7 very shortly. Just remembering, like, at the end of the day, it really is just relax, pay attention, be yourself. Those are really simple things. And the more that you practice them, the more you recognize they're the same thing. Just settle into your life. You know, all the thoughts are panic about things that you think are important that ultimately age will show you aren't. That's why I love talking to old people. You know, when something just goes to shit in their life, they're just like, nah, all right. You know, like, we'll see what's next. You know, like, it's like I'm in my 70s. There's nothing left you can really throw at me that's going to knock me off guard at this point. You know, it's me and death. That's pretty much it. You know, but that's it. As you start to go through life, you realize that's always the case. You know, I could die tomorrow. Or I could die in 50 years. Am I going to continue to go through the up and down roller coaster of fucking panic just because I'm over invested in thinking that I know what's right and I know that if it doesn't work out, it's all going to go to shit? Like, it's really all the things I convince myself I know. I don't need to do that. That I know.
I think that's a lot of where simplicity comes from is understanding that a lot of those, you know, considerations that you're taking in all the time as you grow up, like, you start to realize there more and more of them are all assumptions. Like, so many of those, like, spinning plates are assumptions, and you start, you know, being honest with people, chatting with people, and people start surprising you. It's like, oh, those were all my own assumptions. They weren't actually, you know, rooted in anything outside of myself. And, you know, that sort of key, you know, the archway that led to so many things a lot of times is thinking about yourself, you know, in one way or another, and the actions that stem from that. And I don't know, finding a balance between that, because you can kind of double down on thinking about yourself too, or thinking that, you know, there's a right way or a wrong way to be yourself, or, you know, express yourself, or do something. But you start to notice what, you know, actions are more self-involved versus which ones aren't. And, you know, when you simplify things into just relax a little bit more, it's like things start to become more and more obvious in yourself, you know, in your actions and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, that's a big part of the process of growing up, is taking in an older person. Most old people don't give too many fucks anymore. It's like gets easier and easier to be yourself, the more real, you know, the quote unquote end becomes. But that's a constant all the time. It's like, you know, you can have this idea that it's like, oh, about 80 years, 90 years, but that's not, like, you don't get to see what's next. You don't get to see tomorrow. So you could be just as close to that, you know, endpoint as anyone, you know. It's like, it becomes more obvious when it's like, oh yeah, this body is deteriorating, but it can, you know, it happens in a moment. And keeping that in mind can, you know, at least, you know, help simplify things a little bit at the very least, because it's like, you don't take yourself with you when you die either. Like, this whole thing that you're, you know, afraid of, you know, you mentioned fucking up really bad, but we'll blow out of proportion, you know, just a little thing, you know, like saying one thing to someone in a silly way, or making
forgot to use my coupon at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I forgot to bring something to someone else, or tried to make a joke and it didn't land. It's like those things are the things that we can blow up into these massive things. And it's like you're still going to wake up tomorrow and probably no one's going to be thinking about it except for you. And that's all the time. That can go with anything, and you start to realize more and more that like, oh, this is it right here. It's what are you, what exactly are you living for? Which moment are you living for? Is it some random moment down the road, or is it this moment? Which one are you prioritizing?
Yeah. And you don't need 80, 90, 100 years to think about, it's not like if someone died at 30 and someone died at 80, they could both feel the same way. Like, I have lived, I have shot, I was shooting my shot, and I gave it a good whirl, and, and I gave everything I could to each of the days that I did have, because sometimes people think, I need to plan for 80, 90, 100. It's like, no, you don't need to plan for a certain appropriate number of decades. You don't have to plan for anything, and even when you are planning, and I think about that, that's just the one choice to now explore and write down relevant choices that you think are going to come up or worth considering. But in every moment, you're only making one choice. And so choices are inherently simple because you can only make one at a time. And even when I'm thinking about my planning stages, it's like, yeah, but that is the one choice to list relevant choices. That's still just one choice. Even my planning, in every moment is still down to this single experience, and yet it's constantly shape-shifting, and yet it feels like, there's different days and weeks, and I'm different at 20 and 30 and 40, and it's like, although it seems very different, it is just one beautiful culmination of one focus, one keystone, here right now. And I love that keystone can be relaxation, because that is the foundation that holds the entire archway up. And the archway can be different shapes and or not necessarily different shapes, but it can be different designs and sizes and made from different materials. But ultimately, the keystone for all of our individual experience of arches is the relaxation keystone.
Or pay attention, or be yourself. These are the keystones that I've found in my life applied to everything else. Mm-hmm. Every other decision I make hinges on those keystones. Because if I'm not being myself, so many more of my thoughts are about who I think I should be or who I'm afraid I'm not. Mm-hmm. That clouds everything I look at. It clouds every decision I make, whether it's about my finances or my life as a whole, relationships, shit, how I respond to somebody saying hi on the street. Like everything is changed by that one simple thing. Am I being myself? Am I paying attention? That's another foundational one. This is this is where Eckhart Tolle, his keystone is be present. Mm-hmm. Right? For Krishnamurti, it was that there is no I. The I is the source of conflict. That was a keystone. Right? And these are all, everybody looks at things differently, but they're all finding a very simple foundational insight or a foundational perspective or a foundational choice, as Amanda said, that changes everything. It's like when you get up in the morning, if you don't first choose to breathe, your day is going to be real fucking short. Mm-hmm. Breathing is the foundational keystone to your day, right? From there, everything else can continue. But what else do you do psychologically? What else do you do that isn't necessary? Where are you choking yourself and stopping yourself from breathing emotionally?
Right, a mental breath. Yeah, mental, emotional breath, right? Because thank goodness physically it's involuntary, because I was just thinking,
I would have died. Oh my god! So long ago.
Dolphins are one of the species that do quote unquote voluntarily breathe, and so I wonder how much how much of our life is and just an involuntarily breathing. Like it's like we're forced to breathe, but we're not emotionally breathing. We're not choosing to. We're not paying attention to the fact that we're holding our breath. Mm-hmm. And we're living a life on one held breath.
Yeah. and that sense of like trying to be something, trying to play a role, not being yourself, trying to balance all the plates, trying to be something for someone else is again just an assumption
Mm-hmm.
too. But there's not like you don't get the sense of looking outside of yourself or passing off anything outside of yourself when
Mm-mm.
you're being yourself. It's like they both kind of go together. And as you become more aware of your choices, it's like you you got nothing but being yourself. And it's like, why would you try to be anything else? It hasn't actually helped you at all through your life, trying to be something, trying to play a role based on, for your assumptions about how someone, you
Mm-hmm.
think someone should see you or how you want someone to see you, as if there's control in that, because there's not control in that, in how someone sees you. Like, people are going to see you how they see you. And a lot of times, like, you know, the things that you do, sometimes you do, fuck up bad and things play out in certain ways and people do see you in certain ways. But again, you can't really know how someone looks at you. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't see through someone else's eyes. You don't get that
No, but it ties really
perspective.
great into the question that we have in our comment
Oh, do we?
section, which was, do you guys think in your mid to late 20 point in life that you need to accomplish certain things? Society makes it seem like you need to have everything accomplished by your 30s. That ties into that like shared expectation that we kind of are introduced to very early on, that you're supposed to know what kind of person you are, you're supposed to know like what your life is supposed to be, you're supposed to have like your life purpose laid out, and they give you that impression in like grade school. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Which is funny because
Most
we're
people
not
do.
even a developed person until 25,
But they
26. Like,
ask you at 5, what do you want to
oh
be?
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but isn't it funny? Like the question here is, do you think you're supposed to have all of this accomplished? If you have a fully functioning brain and an adult body at that age, that's pretty much the bar. Well done, you've made it this far and you haven't died. Yeah, and then from there you get to figure. I don't think you really do start figuring anything out until your mid 20s. I think your mid 20s are where you start to realize the most important insight of all. Fuck, I don't know everything. That's really it. Because you'll notice most of your young life, you're like, I know that, I know that, I know that, and you never want to admit that you don't know. Then all of a sudden you get a fully formed brain, and you're just like, well, of course I don't fucking know. And now you have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where most of our real creativity comes from. That's where a lot of our entrepreneurship really comes from. I mean, you get your 19, 20-year olds that are out there, doing the grind, making money, doing all that, but they're giving up fucking years and years of quality time that they could have spent on self-development. This is shit that's going to ripple throughout the next 2 decades, 3 decades of their life,
Yep.
where they just didn't take that fucking time, and now they can't sleep at night because no matter how successful they are, they don't feel like they're enough.
Yeah.
Like there's so much to that.
But on paper, they're accomplished because
Oh
they've
yeah.
got the title and the office and the car and the bank account balance, and so they are accomplished and on paper.
Yeah.
But their life feels empty. The experience feels hollow. And so it's like, society makes it seem like you're supposed to have a life on paper, but you don't live on paper. It's just insane. It's absurd when you think about it. Because people make relationships and friendships, and it's because if somebody looks good on paper, oh, I don't associate with people like that. Oh, you mean a person?
It's funny because to reframe this question,
Mm-hmm.
rather than do you think a person should have a great deal of accomplishments by their to late 20s, I would want somebody in their mid to late 20s to have a fuck ton of failures.
Hmm.
Like I would love by the time you reach, full
Yeah.
adulthood, that you've tried so many fucking things that you've
Yeah.
just learned so much about your ability to try new fucking
Jack of all
things, and
trades.
that the failures didn't mean anything about you. I think the failures are far more important at that age than the successes by a
Yeah.
long shot, because the failures are what teach you your value has nothing to do with whether or not you got the accomplishment, whether or not you achieved it. It has everything to do in your willingness to express your potential. Everything.
Yeah, because that value's in your head. The accomplishments are in your head, and like it's interesting because despite that being the best thing, going through a bunch of failures, it's like that time in life where it's the most petrifying, to fail or feel like you're failing or not doing enough. Like it feels like so much on the bar, in your teenage years through high school, the time where it's like it could be messing up a bunch that would set you up great for adulthood, or, trying something that's a little bit different than what everyone else is doing. And yet it seems like that bar of doing what everyone else is doing is so that like that's the most important thing, is fitting in, and that sense of fitting in. Like it's really hard to have faith in yourself and just make decisions for yourself when that priority is fitting into some, society, the society with the question, all the things you want to have accomplished by, 30 or 40 or 20 or whatever age it is. Like they're all in our head, and they all are for someone else. It's like they're for you if you think about yourself, and take that time to think in a certain way that's like a very individual experience. If you're thinking about yourself and how much you've accomplished, like it's probably rare that someone sits down and thinks about how much someone else has accomplished unless they're measuring themselves
Yeah.
versus them and trying to be something.
Am I better or worse than this other person?
And then they're still not looking at all the details. They're not looking at all the failures that led to those accomplishments or anything else. Like they're just looking at the superficial. They're looking at enough to validate how they want to see
Well, the
themselves.
keystone is validation, and it's the wrong size, guys.
And there's no understanding of, like, you have no idea what their experience is like. You don't know what's going on, in their head, how they see themselves, whether they think that they've even succeeded no matter what they say or express internally. It could be
Yeah.
a nightmare, the hellstorm.
We might be able to guess that they're not relaxed or paying attention enough to see that they're not relaxed and are probably not being themselves. Those are some pretty safe guesses that we can consider might be a possibility, because they very much are reflecting the same keystone or the same priority. This moment is enough. This moment as is, regardless of the opinion. And when you aren't relaxed, you rarely do you pay attention to the stress, but when you do, when the attention is caught and you're noticing that you are stressed, it almost feels like it's like you relax. There's almost like relief. You're like, oh, I'm stressed. You're like, oh shit, I'm stressed. All right. I'm a little tense.
Pretty much
And it's
it.
like,
And
then it's like, why? And then you're like, well, can't really come up with many good reasons.
I wasn't being myself. I was trying to be something.
Having something else in mind, kind of.
Now, the
Like,
question is that why you're tense, or are you doing that as a result of tension?
Both.
yeah, it's like, where does it start?
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? Like, is it one and the same? And I think it is. I think tension and egotism go hand in hand. I think that, it's the clenching, it's the fear response. As soon as I'm afraid, there's an I.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Exactly.
As soon as
It's
you
the
say
best
it.
I.
It's like, are you? Do you know that you're afraid? Or is that something? And how often is it the things like we confirm within ourselves? Like, oh, I'm this type of person. Oh, I'm anxious right now. It's like, are you? Like, are you really? And like, what exactly is telling you that? You can feel certain things. Are you afraid? Right now, you can feel a wave of something. You can feel emotions. You can feel all these things. But like, do you know it? Like, do you know that thing that you're afraid, that you're frightened, that you are doing a great job, that you're doing a terrible job? Like, you really don't know these things. And like, even just in moments where it's like, oh, I'm so tense right now, I need to relax, or I'm more relaxed right now. It's like, you don't really think about how relaxed you are when you're actually relaxed. It's like you're doing things, you're living life. It's not, oh, am I this, am I that? And then the focus on, oh, I feel really, really tense right now. I got to do something to, relax or to not be tense. And like, just in those moments where you start telling yourself more of those things, like, do you know that? Like, are you sure? Or could you not exactly be sure of that? And then you won't at least panic in response to, thinking that there's something you got to do about the tension, about the, anxiety or concern or nerves or fear or whatever it is. It's like, something's going to go how it goes. And then, you go and do something else. And there's going to be feelings that bubble up as you do those things too, but you don't really know what they're called, where they come from exactly. And yeah, that just being willing to be uncertain, like, take the next step, see how it goes. But, you don't have to try and be something for everyone else or for someone else, because that'll, you just keep adding plates to the spinning plates, and then, you can't hold on to them forever. You start paying attention to something besides all the plates, and they all come crashing down.
Yeah.
And then you may realize that you never had to focus on all the different plates anyway. A couple of them having to do with, how you see yourself,
Yeah.
what you want to be, what you want to, someone else to see you as, which, there's no way to guarantee that either.
No, but I do want to zoom in on one plate, and that's like the plate that's taking things personally. And in that, there's really only one consideration, the idea of you.
Yep.
Like we talked about, or what has come up in this conversation is like growing up, and how, the process of growing up could be described as taking in more considerations because of accumulation of experiences that kind of made other considerations relevant, or brought the relevancy of other considerations to the table or to your attention. But when you're taking things personally, and that tends to be the case, or tends to be a frequent experience when you're quote unquote younger, you're only taking in one consideration: me. I'm not getting something. This means something. Like, I'm not getting my way. I'm the most important consideration. People are not giving me what I want. Like, however we want to word that, it's basically you have one and only consideration when you take things personally, and that consideration is you, and only you. And so, growing up and taking in more considerations, and the relaxation and the paying attention, it's like, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice to take in other considerations, to consider other people, because it is a shitty experience to only have one consideration. And you can learn that at any age. And so it's just, I really like the reminder that when you are relaxed, when you are paying attention to the state that you're in, being yourself isn't a concept. It isn't a goal anymore. It's just what you are doing in every single moment when you're not trying to do something else.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a great conversation. I've been really enjoying this. And I wanted to circle back to where we started with the authenticity. Specifically, I wanted to talk about what was said there in terms of just, seeing two things that could tie together, but didn't, and then just tying them together because they make sense. And I wanted to celebrate a recent development in Dualistic Unity, and we're going to see this going into season 7, in that we identified two very obvious things that very much align with the conversation that we're having, very much align with the practice that we're talking about, and in fact, the ability to make ripples in an environment that is more accepting and does have a certain degree of more awareness, and maybe even a bit more doubt and fear that's in there, because otherwise what are we dealing with, right? Karaoke, which we've known for a long time, is a magical experience that, frankly, in the right environment with the right mentality, can change your life. And of course, the conversation around cannabis and hemp. That is a conversation that's very conscious, very aware, very much expanding, as it does have to do with mental health, physical health, the health of our economy, the health of our world, our ecosystem, that whole thing. So that's another topic that aligns seamlessly with Dualistic Unity. And so I'm really excited, because in season 7, we're going into a lot more of the being high episodes with Dualistic Unity. We've got a lot more people from the cannabis and hemp industry coming to talk to us about what they know, what's happening in the world, how things are changing, which is incredibly exciting. And then on the other hand, we now have a karaoke service. Dualistic Unity is now hosting karaoke services in the Nanaimo, British Columbia area. We've teamed up with a number of awesome people here in town, and we are going to be basically creating these live events very much with the cornerstone or the keystone of authenticity as the core. Everything that we talk about here is what we want to embody as the environment for these people who are willing to express themselves. And so I'm very excited. There's a QR code on the screen. You can also go to dualisticunity.com and look under events if you want to see a little description of what it is that we're doing. But karaoke and cannabis and hemp, this is going to be a great season coming up. And I just want to celebrate, because it really was a leap of insight in these two directions, just to go, well, shit, like we keep talking to people from one of those two worlds. Maybe they're not that far apart. Who knows what other worlds aren't that far apart? And so if anybody in the audience has an idea of an activity or a business or even just a topic of conversation out there that we're not currently involved with that you feel aligns well with Dualistic Unity, let us know. Join our Discord. Let us know in the Patreon call. Whatever you can do, because season 7 is going to be great. It's really going to be about integration. It's really going to be about communication, collaboration. I couldn't be more excited. So before we wrap this up, I just want to say thank you to everyone. And I want to say thank you to Amanda and Andrew, because, man, it's been a long road. You know, it's been 6 seasons. We've gone through a lot of stuff. And throughout all of that, all of our conversations and events, all of the places we've traveled, all of the things that we've done, all of the weird shit that we've also dealt with along the way, the fact is that we've never really known each other in all of that time. And in the last 3 months that you two have been here in Nanaimo, we've learned more about one another. You know, we've learned more about ourselves as a result, you know, because it's very easy to have the conversations online, but then when you're with those people, you're like, right, I am that person. You know, it's not just when I'm with these people that I'm that person. I am that person. And that takes a lot of reconciling too, because sometimes we want to beat ourselves up. Sometimes we want to look at ourselves in a certain way, and we just don't know. And so I love the expression that the proof is in the pudding. I love the reality that the life you're experiencing is the life that you have built, that you ultimately not deserve, but that is appropriate to all the work that you have done. And I'm very happy about the life that I'm experiencing and sharing with the both of you and everybody on this podcast, everybody in the community and the groups. Whether you're with the groups or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is that things are changing, and we're changing with it. And it's changing with us, because there is no division. I want to take a moment to celebrate of season 6. This was a good one, and I look forward to episode 43. I also wanted to give a shout out to Fiona and Jazz and our buddy Oren, as well as Jackie. We appreciate all of you and all of the things that you've helped us learn in the entirety of season 6, especially, but even up until then. We hope you're all doing very well, and we look forward to chatting with you in the future at some point when we all come back together. I know 2 of you are like, I talk to you all the fucking time, and that's okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody was included. I'm done talking now.
Don't forget about Levi.
Yes.
Fuck, Levi.
Love you, Levi.
Oh my god.
He
Levi,
just doing.
Levi, we gotta get a link.
But you see, Levi's making content, and so that was the reason I didn't include Levi in there. It was
Well,
the
still a
fact
shout
that-
out to him. 'Cause,
Shout
you
out to
know,
Levi. And if
Absolutely.
you haven't checked out Levi with Levi or mental stretching
Yes.
or any of the yoga stuff,
Hello.
Yoga.
Jesus,
Levi gives us options.
for sure. And we're gonna have a chat with Levi in the near future about some of the things that we've also been talking about. All right, I'm gonna stop there. 'Cause
We've been
otherwise
scheming,
we're-
we've been plotting,
we're
but
gonna
it's
be
been-
giving away stuff that's coming up in the investor newsletter. So we got to wait. Stay tuned, everybody. There's going to be a lot of cool shit happening, and thank you so much.
This has been awesome. We got one more episode of season 6, so I won't get too sentimental about, all of the seasons leading up, but it's been a transformative season in a lot of ways, a lot of shifts with the business and, just being in person. It's
Yeah.
been incredible, to see that and see those changes and see just more of yourself, seeing more sides to yourself and seeing, as we were talking about before, you go through things and you still wake up the next day, there's still opportunity no matter what. There's always the potential to make a ripple, make a new type of ripple, different type of ripple. And that's exciting. As much as we go through things in our life, ups and downs, it's like there's still just this moment. There's still this moment, and as much opportunity as you had yesterday, as much opportunity as you had when you were, 5 years old, 15 years old, 50 years old, and you're going to have the same potential when you're, 80 years old to, make a ripple and, just not always put yourself first, because it's really hard to see past yourself when you're just staring at that all the time, and it doesn't have the payoff that you maybe once thought that it would. So it's been a great episode, and I look forward to the season finale whenever that happens.
Ow, ow. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It has been a real treat and a hell of a ride to sit here in awe of the simplicity and the magnificence of existence of this moment. And we look forward to exploring it more. Let's see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
But before you log off, and we'll clip this from the end of the episode, we've had some comments during the live stream regarding immigration, Trudeau, snowboarding, bunch of stuff. Ordinarily, we would answer this, but this is one of our classic episodes. This was season 6, episode 42 that we just recorded live. We do raw episodes and social episodes throughout the week. If you would like to join us, you can. We are here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yes.
We have raw episodes pretty much every day, except Wednesday. So join us any other time, and we will answer these on the fly. We won't quite be so involved with the topic at hand because it won't be a classic episode. But
Yeah.
just wanted to let you know. And thanks so much for being here, everyone.
And keep them coming.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care.